I mean, it's funny because I feel like you were always one of those people where I was never sure if you had made the move stateside for a long time.
Yeah, I was in London before. I was in London for like 10 years before I came here.
Okay.
So I did like trips and stuff, and I was releasing. Oh wait, have we started?
I mean, it's recording now, but I'll just kind of like edit it in wherever it feels good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was in London for 10 years, but I was like releasing on Mad Decent, so I was kind of like, in the periphery of the US scene and like coming over for the block parties, but didn't move here until 2018.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, I figure you've got to have a really interesting perspective. I was stoked to talk to you for a bunch of reasons, but one of which is that I feel like we sort of intersected with a lot of the same scenes over the years, but somehow I think never really met, never really interacted. And so I'm really curious, like your experience of going through a lot of these same touch points that I went through, but kind of on it's almost like a parallel universe kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I thought the same when I looked through like your guests on your podcast. And I was like, oh, yeah, we're going to like know the same.
Yeah, it's going to be all the same stuff.
I clocked that. Like, I think I saw Nicky Nair, and then I saw like even Fluster. Did you have Flustradamus on?
Oh, many times. He's one of my best friends.
Many times. Yeah. Okay, cool. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all the same stuff.
It is kind of like interesting being in LA now, and like when I moved here, I was like, I'm just going to focus on like producing pop for other people, and I'd kind of like shifted all my energy on that and wasn't going to do any kind of artist thing at all anymore. And then being here, it was like I don't know, I just fell into doing that and have this funny crossover with like people I work with on like other people's projects that I know from like 2009 SoundCloud days and like
right.
Mad Decent, and then we're doing like some other project for like another person, and then I'm like collaborating with people I've known for ages on new music for us, and I don't know, it just feels kind of fun at the moment. It's like worlds colliding a little bit and not feeling like, I think when I started it used to feel like you had to be in one scene, and like if you drifted from that, especially living in the UK and where I started, it was like if you kind of drifted from anything and tried something else, you were not like legit.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is something I've said on the podcast before. I'm curious what you think of it. It's me sort of trying to find the silver lining of this like age of disposable content that we're in. And I think maybe one of the silver linings is kind of what you were saying, is that you actually do have the ability now to try a bunch of different things, because if it doesn't work out, or if somebody doesn't like it or engage with it or whatever, it doesn't matter because it's just gone, right?
Yeah, that's true. Definitely. There's like so many pros and cons to how things work now. And obviously there's so much coming at us, and we feel like, the pressure to do so much to even cut through. But then also you have so much freedom, and you can like, I don't know. I mean, that in itself, in the last couple of years, I'm probably more inspired to do artist stuff again, just because I've felt that freedom where it almost feels like there is so much noise that you can be as adventurous and like take as many risks as you like, because in some weird way, not following the rules now is probably going to like land you in a stronger position. Whereas like a while ago, it felt harder to break the rules.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. You're totally right. It was harder to break the rules. And now everything's chaos, which is, not like a fun way to exist in the industry, but it does create certain opportunities. I think you're right. I think a lot of this too is me just trying to like make myself feel more comfortable in a new era. Because I think for anyone who's been doing it for a while, like you, like many people we both know, you know, for like the new generation that's just getting into music right now, this era is going to feel natural. This is just what you do. And it makes sort of intuitive sense because that's just the way it's always been for them, right? And we had our own era of that people older than us didn't understand. And so it's this constant cycle, but I do catch myself a lot these days needing to remind myself that it's like, no, you still, no matter what era, you got to find the fun in it. That's like the only way it's going to work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like when I started, my favorite artist was Burial. And like when I put my first track out, I was like, I don't want to show my face. I'm going to be like Burial. Yeah. Like I'm not even going to show, you know, photos of myself on MySpace. Like nobody's going to know who I am. I had like mysterious like photos where people were like, is it a girl? Is it a guy? Like, who's this person? And like, obviously it's impossible to do that now. Yeah. Like, unless you're one of the tiniest percentage of people that have an impact like that. But yeah, when you think about starting in that kind of landscape to like what it's like now, and I did have to like train myself to be more of not an extrovert, but just a bit more open, because my natural, like, you know, my like peaceful state is kind of behind the scenes a little bit. And that used to be much more natural to be an artist and be that. And I was like super underground artist. I never really like broke in any genre because I kept changing my styles and doing like one thing. And then that like wasn't interesting, you know, to me anymore. So I like switched it to another thing just as it was like starting to work for me. Which is why I think I'm good as a producer with an artist project as opposed to like everything in one project, because I just changed my styles too much.
Well, no, that makes total sense. And I mean, it makes me want to ask you a couple questions off of that. I guess broadly, this is like the broadest question of all time. So there's no wrong answer. But if you think about sort of your idea of what you wanted, like your dream version of your career when you started versus kind of what it's evolved into now, like how has that changed over the years? Like what did you want out of it in like the perfect dream world when you started?
I think like it's weirdly close to what like to my wildest dreams in a weird way. Like, I mean, producing was just so magical and fascinating and like untouchable to me when I started. I was like, how are people making this stuff? And I started off raving and, you know, on forums and like making friends on the internet, and then getting Fruity Loops and trying to figure out like how to make stuff. But I was like, I mean, I didn't know how. I was into like jungle and drum and bass and lots of electronic other stuff. Like, but
this is Western Australia that you grew up in?
Yeah. And I was like, I didn't even understand, you know, sampling drum breaks. And so I was trying to make like an Amon break for like singular drum sound, you know, hits.
Oh yeah, you were trying to make like a bespoke organic break.
Yes.
Like, yeah.
And I was like, how the fuck is anyone doing this? So I was like, this is some mathematical like crazy shit. So I think my wildest dreams would have been just that I was able to like sit down and make something that was in my head, or like, and I'm also not like musically trained. I don't have like, I played lots of instruments when I was younger, but then like quit them quickly. So I can't really like play anything well. And so I think just the fact that I can like make music is kind of, and do it as a living is probably my what I would have like dreamed up to be the ultimate thing that I could possibly do when I was younger, just because it seems like so far and impossible at that time. Because I was like, how the hell does anyone do this?
Well, what was like the spark then to even try it? If it seemed sort of like far-fetched that this was a thing that could happen, was it like a particular song, or was it a group of friends who played something for you? Or was it a show you saw? Like what started?
I think it was being in like a scene as a teenager, going to raves, learning how to DJ with like records, and like being a part of that and then wanting to be taken seriously. And it was like I think also that it's something, I don't want to like talk about being a girl in that scene or whatever, because I feel like it's actually really nice to not be asked off the bat, like about that, because I feel like my whole career has been that. But when I think about like when I started, it was almost like wanting people to take me a bit seriously, because it was all dudes, like, and it was, you know, it was kind of like such a little scene, but everyone was so into it, and I was younger than everyone, and I was like, you know, the people that were like being taken seriously and getting booked for things were making stuff, and it wasn't like on a, you know, big scale level. It was just like they would play some tracks that they'd made, and you know, it was like that nerdy scene where, you know, you'd know every track that was being played. You'd know when it was unreleased or when it was like, no, we didn't have Shazam. It was just like, we just knew the tracks and like knew, you know, oh, he's playing those promos, or like, you know, I mean, it was fun. It was just,
dude, that's the beauty of like a small scene before it really blows up, or like a local scene before the world learns about it, is that everyone there is, I mean, I don't want to sound pretentious about it, but it's like everyone in those scenes, it's like they're educated in a way about like the music and the songs. And like you said, you know, a DJ comes and plays an unreleased song, and just everyone in the crowd knows automatically like that this is a new song and that this is exciting. And there's this kind of shared silent agreement between everybody. That is something I'm sure like small local scenes still have that today, but I think for me, it's like, I don't know that I will ever have that again in my life. You know?
Same. Like I feel very far from that now, but I still feel like I can tap back into that mentality, and with friends that I know from, like, have known for such a long time and kind of know from that scene. But I think the thing that when I really started making music, because I couldn't make that kind of music, but was when I went to Athens to visit like some internet friends when I was like 20.
That's amazing.
To make music with them, and they showed me Burial, and like they were in like the scene there, and it was really cool. It was like, could have been terrifying. My mum was like, "You're gonna go." I like saved up enough for my flight, basically, with like the tiniest bit of extra money, and I'm also half Dutch, so I had family in Holland, so I was going to like go thereafter. And I was like, I think it was just the fact that like they introduced me to so much music that didn't feel, because, you know, drum and bass has like strict rules that you have to follow. Yes. And it's like about who has the best snare, who has like, the mix is so important with making drum and bass. So for me, starting out, that was so like overwhelming. Like I just couldn't crack the code of how, even when I'd figured out that they were like sped up drums,
that you
I
could
still
sample,
couldn't figure it out. Yeah, like it still sounded like shit when I tried to make it. So I think like discovering all this other music, and that was really like the sort of birth of when the dubstep scene started to emerge in the UK, and I started to like discover all the stuff that like people were doing in Croydon, and like because I went to London after that trip, and I just got so into it. And I got like a job working at a nightclub called The End, which is closed now, but that, you know, everyone would play there. It was like techno, house, like there were so many legendary nights there that I got exposed to so much music. But hearing stuff that didn't necessarily follow like rules kind of gave me the permission to be like, I can make something. And when I got back to Australia, I spent like a month making 2 tracks, and I sent them to Skream, and he like replied and wanted to release them. But they were the first 2 tracks I made.
I mean, that alone, I think tells you that you were kind of on to something, right? Like if the first 2 tracks you made are recognized by, I mean, Skream is a legend to this day, but at the time, you know, he was like one of the luminaries of that whole sound. I don't know. I think that says something. I mean, if you, again, broad question, but if you look back at that, that moment, like the first few things you make getting recognized by someone who knows what they're talking about. What were you doing differently, or like what were you on to that you just sort of had a connection to kind of make something that connected that quickly?
I think I was just so determined to make something that I could send to people to play that I just concentrated. I mean, it was actually one track. It was like I concentrated on one track over a month, and it was just like pieced together from samples and drum samples. And it was like, the way that I produced, if you looked at it, it would just be like little dots everywhere of like samples. I didn't really use that MIDI or anything. And so it was like, I just concentrated on that one task, and I was like working at the time, and I was working in a record store actually in Perth and studying. I did do a music course for a couple of years, like a production thing. I don't think I learned much, but
many people
but
don't.
I was like,
I had a similar experience. Yeah.
No. But I just think it was like that one goal that I set myself. And then when I sent it, and it was funny because I was like working at this record store and, talking to my mates that I worked with and being like, I like finished the track, like, and I'm going to send it to Skream. And they were like, okay, cool. Like, and then the next day I was like, Skream replied, like, and they were like, what?
That's so good. Cool. I mean, I think that's actually really good advice. I've never heard it put exactly that way, that when you start off, it wasn't exactly, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was that it wasn't exactly sort of, what do I have to say artistically? What is my grand statement to the world? It's more about what can I make that the people I am fans of might connect with, what fits in
completely
with this thing I'm in love with, which is a much simpler goal to wrap your head around when you're just starting off.
And also, you don't really have, even if you're trying to like copy someone, which I kind of was, I was like into Burial and the early dubstep stuff, I wasn't able to make something that sounded exactly like that. So what I made was like, a collection of little attempts and mistakes that ended up being something unique to me, because that was like my first attempt, And then like because he wanted to cut it to dub plate to play, and then he wanted to put it out. And so the next challenge was make a second song for a B-side. So it was like another track that also probably took me like a month on the same track.
Right. Well, as we were talking, I realized I wanted to contextualize for people listening who might not know, because we're talking about Perth and Western Australia and drum and bass and that whole scene. And for people who don't know, I mean, am I correct in saying that like drum and bass in Western Australia is like almost a religion in a weird way? Like it's bigger there than maybe anywhere else except the UK.
Yeah, it's so funny. And New Zealand, it's so big in New Zealand still too. But yeah, it's like, I think because, there's a lot of music that has come out of Western Australia and Perth because it's so isolated. And I think like scenes become like strong there and don't really shift and move as much as like Melbourne's like trendier, and things will come in and out, and people will like, I don't know really what it is. That's what I put it down to, being like this isolated city, and it's got its own little like scene. Also, my like closest friend's big brother was in a band with Pendulum. So we grew up looking up to like those guys. Like we just looked up to the people that, were showing us the music, which was them. And then they started to do really well. And like and then they were playing shows with all these people that we were looking up to. And then more, artists from the UK were coming over and playing. So it just it grew, I think, around like the people that were sort of doing interesting things in that scene. But it's still strong now. Like I go home and visit, and I'm not in that scene at all anymore. I have friends from it. I still love it, but for a long time, I've been not a part of it at all or aware of what's going on, especially in Australia, because I haven't lived there in so long. But I go home and it's still big. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh no, it's still, that's the thing. It's kind of beautiful that, it's in a time when sort of regional scenes are all melding into one another and everything's sort of just online now. It's actually kind of comforting to me that there's places like Perth and there's many places around the world, but that still hold on to that one love, that identity. It's kind of nice.
It is. It's like, it's pretty amazing too. It's like a genre that hasn't ever really died.
Right.
Like it's always, you know, the underground scene might remain and maybe the commercial hype dies like after it just has these moments where it like creeps in, and it's having it now or has recently been having it, you know, and it's like, and then it kind of like breathes all this excitement into the scene, but then, you know, the heads are like mad about it.
Yeah. It's my favorite thing about sort of insular protective scenes is when people get mad that it gets successful. You know? I
know, because I get it on some levels because they probably see, you know, these people jumping on board and stuff, but it is funny because like it just remains strong. Like it's still strong.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, here's the last question about the old days and then we'll move on, but I'm always curious, the raves you were going to early on, can you give me an example of like your average rave that you were going to as a teenager? Like, where is it? Who's playing? How many people are there?
So funny to think about. I like don't know how I managed to go to them to start with. Like, I don't know how I managed to convince my parents or whatever, because I was still in school. They were like illegal raves in warehouses. There was always like, you were either like hardcore, like happy hardcore raver, or you were a drum and bass.
Yeah.
I liked both, honestly, but people were really like, are you hardcore or are you drum and bass? You know, like
so funny.
So yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was all the things that teenagers do, or not all teenagers, but drugs and dance music and making friends and
was it
getting
a big
shut down?
Thing? Like
police coming?
Did all the kids from your school go, or was it kind of like were you weird for going to them?
Well, I didn't even live in Perth. I lived like a 5-hour drive south of Perth. We used to go up to Perth. Yeah, we used to go up to Perth. It wasn't a thing that other kids in it was me and my best friend in school, and her cousin is Raya, who I was in a duo with, when I released on Mad Decent and sent demos to Diplo, that was the duo I was in. So, and Raya's brother is Shock One, also a drum and bass producer, was in a band with Pendulum. So it was all like intertwined, you know, and then we used to go up, stay with them, go to raves with them. And they were older than us. So it was like, we would get, you know, go out with Raya's big brother and my best friend Nissa in school, her cousin. That sounds very complicated, but that was the link of like, you know, we would go up and then go to these parties. And and my first like booking was at one of those raves, and I was so excited, and I brought my records, and then it got shut down by the police.
Oh man. Classic. That's incredible. I mean, 5 hours south of Perth is also crazy, because you were just talking about how Perth itself is sort of geographically isolated. 5 hours south of Perth, I mean, is there anything?
Very isolated. I grew up outside of a tiny town. So yeah, so isolated. I think probably the main reason I ended up like having this desire to travel and stuff and leave was I am half Dutch. My dad's Dutch from Holland. I went there as a kid. I felt really connected to like my family over there, and then just the interest with music, which was so, you know, UK centric, and I felt like I needed to go there.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense. I think from what I understand, talking to enough people who have grown up in very small towns or isolated parts of the world, either like you embrace it as a kid and you kind of just live this sort of very free, like disconnected life, or you chafe against it and feel very isolated, like I got to get out of here. You know, there's nothing going on. And I think once you pull the curtain back and see how big the world is, at least for, I don't know, creatively minded people, sometimes, yeah, it can get hard to just stay in one place.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, those early experiences of like visiting family in Holland, I was like, okay, this is where I'm from. I just connected so much with my Dutch family and like their interests. They were all so passionate about their work and it's such a laid back lifestyle. Like where I'm from, it's like, really like salt of the earth, like, just practical jobs and family, going like surfing, working,
yeah,
paying the bills, but yeah, and my dad's similar. Like he gets really obsessed with things he's interested in and he'll like double down on that, and there'll be, you can't get any time with him because he'll be like focused on that thing that he's working on. And I think I'm a bit similar.
Interesting. Yeah. Are you, that's a good question, actually. Are you at this point in your career, is it the sort of like, what's the next project? What's the next task? Like, do you think about it that way? Is that something you find exciting or fun about it? Is just like, here's the thing I'm focusing on. And once that's done, it's like, okay, let's find the next thing to focus on.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that because I feel like it's so much harder for me to do that now. And I just had a conversation with a friend this morning because I couldn't sleep last night. I had the like cliche creative, like thinking about stuff, thinking about the things that I felt like I was putting off, the thing that's really important to me, which is finishing my EP at the moment. But then getting the FOMO and doing sessions for other people's projects, and then feeling like I've let that go too much because I've been focusing on my own project. So then I book a bunch of stuff and then I'm in sessions thinking about the project that I need to finish.
Of course. Yeah,
and
that's how it always is.
I was like, I went, it's so dumb. Like last night I was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed after this, like, because I did a session yesterday, which was great with an artist I wanted to work with. But I was like, I've got sessions this week and then I'm going to work all weekend. I'm going to focus on my project. And I got into bed and then I was like, I can't sleep. I'm going to take a sleeping pill. But my brain was so busy that I was like, I could not sleep. I got up, made a tea and sat on the sofa and like wrote out shit that I wanted to do. And then this morning spoke to my friend and he was like, another producer he's like Noah Breakfast. He's from Philly. We've known each other from like mad decent days and we work together still on music a lot. And like, we're like each other's music therapists. Right. So he was like, giving me the spiel of just like, he was just like, it's because you believe in it that, and you love it. And that's why it can feel like a weight when you're finishing your own stuff. He's like, you got to tap me in. He's like, I'll sit on the couch. We're just going to like make a list. And I was like, thank you so much. All sleep deprived at the DMV this morning. Like,
oh man, you've had anyway. quite a fun 24 hours. It sounds like.
Yeah, that's the honest insight into. Yeah, I find it really hard to just like block out all the noise and focus on one project. But my natural state would be to do that, but I find it so hard, especially in LA when so much is going on, and now you can't help but feel like, oh, if I like say no to this, am I missing out? Or if it's hard.
No,
it's hard
of course, and I think in any kind of and I mean this as a compliment, and I put myself in the same category, but any kind of like middle class musician existence, there is sort of that sense in the back of your mind that, like you said, you kind of have to say yes to the opportunities when they're there, and you're aware of how quickly stuff can go away too. So it's, making the choice to focus on one thing exclusively, at least for me, can feel scary that way. In that, I mean, I guess that's just the typical like putting all your eggs in one basket thing, but it's hard to do even when it's the right thing to do.
Completely. And you're right. It does come from like a bit of a fear of not having that safety net, or like when you've been a broke musician for years, or if you don't have that like backup, whatever, like loaded parents thing. Like you feel a bit like, fuck, like, especially putting time into things that aren't, or, immediately paying you. They're like long-term things that are meaningful to you, that you're hoping will pay off, but they're not, you're doing it for other reasons other than just getting paid. So it feels like a little scary. And even now I have to like tell myself, you're good. Like, you're good. You've been good for years. Like everything's fine, but it doesn't, I don't know, it sits with you. And I was so married to like the idea of just being a broke artist when I lived in London. Like all my friends were broke. It's like such a different world in LA. You're like, oh shit, you can make money from music. And like, I don't know. I mean, people do make money from music over there too, but I wasn't.
No, I know exactly what you mean. And it's a different time in your life. I mean, that for me was when I was living in Chicago, and we were all of us were, more or less broke. And we were just, going out playing shows 4 or 5 nights a week and meeting people and forging these relationships that would last the rest of my life in the business. But it was that thing, like that's what everyone was doing. And then you get to another point in your life where that's not what everyone is doing. And at least for me, then if I see myself approaching that, like getting anywhere near sort of that style of living again, there's sort of an immediate reaction of like, oh no, I already did that. I can't do that again.
Yeah. It's funny. There's like a bit of an association with, like for me, even working on artist stuff again, even though I'm in such a different position now and I am fine, it still triggers something in me like that working on artist stuff is not what I should be doing. Like I shouldn't be putting my energy on that because I associate that path with like the struggle. So like even there's so many things like that, which I find so interesting. Like I did a DJ mix that I'm going to put up today just for like, I haven't done a DJ mix in so long. And that was like such a weird experience because like not a serious thing, just putting some music together that like I've been playing at the parties I've been throwing, but all the like PTSD from like my early years in a DJ scene where it was important what you included in it, how many like unreleased things were in it. And I'm not trying to do that with this, but like I spent a freaking week on this thing and, like, and I was like, this is not what I should be spending my time on. And nobody's consuming it in that way. This is not even what it's for. But like those early years, they just like have such an effect. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. It's like you're trying to make something to satisfy like people from your past, Yeah. Like DJs that nobody knows who they are, but they were my favorite DJs in London. And I was like, oh, I hope they're going to play or like this track or think this mix is cool. Right. Yeah. I mean, there is something to look in the silver lining of that. I love the idea, and I do this to this day too, of still, even in the modern day, spending a week working really intensely on something that like realistically is not going to be sort of your main, it's not going to be what you're known for. Like it's kind of just for you, even if it's coming from like a stressful place. I do think there's still something valuable about that.
Yeah, me too. The process is funny because you kind of like catch yourself, going through the stages of like overthinking shit and then like laughing at yourself and being like, this doesn't even matter. But like, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, it's like a weird therapy in a way.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's funny.
Oh, man. Well, and I mean, we should contextualize too for anyone listening or watching this that, doesn't have all the context. I mean, it's funny to hear you talk about getting stressed out, thinking about the idea of like going back to session work and working, because you've worked with so many huge names and, been credited on tons of huge tracks. I mean, again, just for anyone listening who doesn't know, Skrillex, Aluna George, Hudson Mohawke, Tinashe, Iconopop, and a bunch more, right? Like, it's a crazy list. And so, I mean, I don't know. It's just funny even now after that list, you can be like, well, I don't know, does this make sense?
My gosh, yeah. It's like the sort of imposter syndrome, the cliche. It doesn't really go, I don't think. And I feel like I'm surrounded by people that are far more successful than me. And then I realize they do this shit too, and then I'm like, well, if you're thinking you're like not going to be able to write another song and you've got this many hits and you're so good, then I mean, maybe I am good because like if you think I'm just like, we're all crazy. Like
everyone's crazy.
That thing of, and like every session, I feel like I have this moment where I'm like, am I going to be able to make anything today? Like at the beginning of the session, like,
oh man. Yeah.
And then you figure it out, but like, it's kind of, I think a lot of people have that experience no matter where they're at. Like, I don't know, maybe some people have figured it out and they're just confident every day, but I think most creatives I know.
Oh, for sure. There's no question. I mean, there's also a thing of like a comedian I really like, this guy, Joe List, recently said this thing that really like hit me in my soul. That was, it was just some tossed off line on stage, but he was saying like, he's like, I know that on paper, I'm more successful than 99% of comedians. He's like, I've made it. This is my life. I've been doing it for decades. He's like, I'm more successful than 99% of people. It's incredible. And I'm so grateful. The only problem is that all of my friends are the 1% who are more successful than me.
That's the fucking thing. That's spot on. You forget how, lucky you are in your position and how far you've come and how rare it is to even be able to make a living off this. And I don't know, it's just so funny that we do that, like the comparison thing, no matter where you are. I mean, I especially in a creative field, like, because you're so used you have to have that like hunger to even, get anywhere in it. Otherwise, I mean, it's all self-motivated energy. Like you have to. It's otherwise you've got no one there telling you, that you're not going to get paid if you don't do these hours. Like it's very easy to not do it, but like so I guess you probably, I don't know if it's possible without having some little unhealthy competitive streak in you or something. Like
and I think a lot of times too, once you're doing it for a while, like you're talking about, you're working on a new EP. And I think sort of back in the day, that's sort of a simple thought, right? It's like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write a few songs. But now you've had so many experiences and you wear a lot of different hats and you almost know too much about the business. Like the way I think about it, when I say it's me trying to make a new EP, it's almost like all of a sudden I'm plopped in the middle of the jungle and I have to like bushwhack back to, the beach or whatever, which is just sort of that pure, like, well, I'll just make a few songs. But there's so much shit you have to cut through just mentally to kind of get there. It's a very bizarre thing.
It is. And it's so like I feel like recently I have tapped into that, like making stuff that I'm just so excited about. And it is from that place of like, can't wait to play it to my friends. Like
that's the best.
That kind of place.
That's the best.
And it is. And it like when I get into that, it feeds the creativity for like, if I'm going to work on someone else's project, I'm coming at it from such a like freer creative space rather than like, when it's all work. I think that's why I do like doing both, because when I am only working on other people's stuff, it feels like, I'm serving someone else's creative vision, which is great, but like it is a collaboration. Like they want ideas from me as well. So I think, I don't know. It really, they do, even though I struggle to balance the two, in a funny way, they feed each other really nicely.
Yeah, of course.
So I do like going back and forth.
And the new EP, is this like a Kito solo EP? Because you've already got the whole Is You project, but I imagine that's all in the can already.
Yeah, we've got that coming. We've got another song coming out next week, and then the EP will be out in May, and that's just been really fun too. Like just, you know, making stuff with Chrome Sparks and purely from a place of like, let's make stuff that we want to play.
It's really fun music. Yeah, I think I got what I think is the whole EP.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's really,
cool.
really fun. It's like, I liked that each track, you know, it's different stylistically, but each one, it felt like whatever the stylistic choice was, you guys really drilled down on it. And so each one is kind of like a little capsule of like pure, I don't know, like pure style or genre. Just like, it's almost like I could feel like your guys' excitement for wherever you ended up sonically that day. Yeah. It's really fun.
It was that was a great exercise in not overthinking that project. It was like 2 ideas we did the first day that we ever made music together, and we're already friends. We've known each other for a long time. So it was like just a fun, like, geeking over a song we both like a track we both liked, and deciding to just like try something. And then the second day we did the next 2 ideas, and then spent more time finishing them. But it was just like, we like them all, let's put them out. You know, it wasn't like, oh, this one doesn't like feel dance floor enough, so we have to like make something. It was just like, we like these tracks, so we want to put them out.
Yeah.
It was good. And then the new EP that I'm working on is a lot more like features. And I'm also putting it out with Mad Decent. So it's been quite a funny, you know, full circle moment. Yeah, to work with that team again. And like, it's really nice actually. And living here, because obviously before when I worked with them, I was living in London. So it was like less connected. And now I've just known them for so long. It just felt really right to.
No, that's so nice. It's so cool. And I mean, you know, Mad Decent as an entity, to see how far it's come and changed over the years. I know. So crazy. Yeah. Who could have thought? Because like coming from the chaos of that label at the start, just wild.
Yeah. I mean, it was a small roster of artists at the time, and like coming over and doing the block parties that they would throw in each city. And it was so like, you know, small team, like, but just crushing it, so ambitious. And yeah, it's pretty amazing to see like what they've built now, and they've remained completely independent, not running through a major or anything. Like, great digital team, great. They like really built such a self-sufficient thing that has remained at the core, the same values that it started with, like in a funny way, which is, I think, pretty rare.
Very rare. I mean, yeah, especially for dance music to stay independent and still stay, you know, more or less successful over a long time. Very rare. It's kind of wild to see. But it's awesome that you're, you know, generally hopping back into like the artist side of it. It makes me wonder, you know, when you started off and like Skream signed some demos, and then Mad Decent put out a bunch of your early records as well. What was it like? Do you have any early memories of sort of getting into the artist side of it, whether it's, you know, people starting to know your music or people knowing songs at the shows, or even just early touring memories that maybe you weren't expecting, something surprising?
I think there was lots of like weird, surprising things at that time, because I mean, not being in America when we were releasing stuff on Mad Decent was funny, because like coming over to doing the block parties and realizing that there was like one song that started to do really well, and Trinidad James sampled it, and then it was in a Victoria's Secret campaign. So like people knew it, and that was weird because it wasn't really doing anything in the UK, but then coming here and people knowing the song, and it like it did well on radio, like, so it was weird. Like I met a stripper that it was her song in Atlanta, like, and I was like, oh my god, like this is crazy. And then like, I mean, that song kind of got me my first publishing deal because it got sampled, and then we had another song that we put out on Mad Decent that the Big Boi and T.I and Ludacris used, and they didn't clear it, so it got taken down. But like, it was like another little, foot in the door in like having my credit on someone else's thing, which I didn't really know about.
Well, yeah, that's actually, I should have asked this earlier, but this is a good time to do it. I mean, working on other people's projects and becoming, like a session producer, session writer, musician. How did you get into that? Was it like that getting sampled moment? And then kind of out of that, figuring out that actually what you do could work not just for you, but for other people's projects as well?
Definitely, because I'm, like I said, I'm like this girl from a tiny town in Australia. Like I wasn't like, I'm going to go get my credit. I'm going to go make some beats for some rappers. Like it wasn't on my list of possible scenarios like in my life. So I think like the fortunate random luck of getting, tracks sampled, like that kind of did open that. And Diplo was doing it. Like he was, working with big artists and having like Major Lazer tracks sampled by Beyonce stuff like that. So it was kind of like he was really I wouldn't say blueprint, but I was like watching what was possible, seeing what he was doing, and then having that opportunity where like Trinidad James at the time had done that huge deal with Def Jam, and like so I came to LA for the first time and I worked with him, and I didn't know how to make beats in the studio, so I brought like a folder of stuff I'd made for sessions. And then I was like, I've run out of beats. I have to go. Like, I can't do any more sessions. That's so all funny. I have. But yeah, that was definitely like my introduction to producing for other people. And then signing with a publisher in the UK, which I didn't know what publishing was when they were, because after the Victoria's Secret sync, they were, trying to meet me and stuff. And I was like, I don't know what publishing is. Like, and actually it was Arthur from Magnetic Man that like put me in touch with a publisher or something. He was like, you should meet
Guy
Moot at Sony TV or EMI, wherever it was.
But it's a good illustration, just to put a point on it, that you sort of never, like all those early relationships that you make when you're kind of just doing it for the love and you don't necessarily have a grander plan for it. All those relationships, if you stick around, will always come back into play in ways you can't predict.
Oh, in such interesting ways. Like when I moved to LA, I moved in with Hudson Mohawke for 6 months while I found a place, and like stuff like that. And we did the Iconopop thing, or like we made a bunch of stuff together for other people, or just like have made music together. But mostly the first collaborations we did were in sessions with songwriters, and we were like, this is so crazy because we know each other from like, I'd never made music with him just as like, we're collaborating. Like I was such a fan and knew him in the UK, but not that well. I sort of got to know him better when I started coming to LA. But it was just so funny, like the full circle of, how people and from certain scenes, and then the relationship like develops into this whole other thing, and you're both working in these other spaces, and like it's kind of cool. I love having those friendships in music that like go back so far, and like you can like really get each other on reference points and stuff, especially when you're in rooms with people that come from more of like, Berkeley and right. They've been trained, or like Nashville, and they come from, which is inspiring because they come at it from a completely different angle. And that's kind of the best, when you're ticking all the boxes and you've got different, your brains are working together from different places. It's perfect. But it's really nice when you have those producer friends and like you do hit those same references and you get excited about the same stuff. It's like, I love it. It's so cool.
I completely agree. I have to ask, how is Hudson Mohawke as a roommate?
He's funny. He's like actually the most like considerate, lovely roommate, like thoughtful and also just really, really funny. And it was awesome because I was so new to LA, and obviously lots of people were coming over and working with him, and he was like inviting me in sessions, and which I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And we both had our like setups, and Yeah, it was cool. It was really fun to like be around someone that was working really hard and I was motivated too. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I don't know him super well. I've DJ'd with him a couple times. Always seemed like a super nice dude, but it's very funny to me to imagine living with him.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Chaotic as well, but like.
Sure.
But it was nice. Yeah, good start. I even made a veggie garden for 6 months.
Well, what was, so that's him. Maybe we should run down a couple, like what was the experience working with Skrillex and Aluna on the most recent project that he put out?
That one's funny because that one was just a classic Skrillex move of like sampling, a song that was already out. So it was a song that I made with Aluna. And then he was in the studio with Boi T.I, I think Jamie XX as well. And they were like just grabbing vocals or things that they thought that they wanted to work on. So he just hit us up for stems of that track. So that track, it's such a classic old style DJ.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like sampling something. It wasn't, I've known Skrillex, I don't know him well, but we have crossed paths many times over the years in lots of different places in the world. And, when I was playing more and stuff, but like, I've never worked with him in the studio.
Okay. Interesting.
It's such a funny one. I've never worked with Diplo in the studio either. Like I've known him for such a long time, but we've actually never sat down in the studio.
That's
and worked,
actually much more surprising to me.
Yeah. And we have the same manager too. I have that. No. which is funny, but like, I guess it's just, I send stuff and, just the way that, someone like Skrillex works, I think unless you're in his immediate orbit, from what I gather, like in the studio in that moment, and I don't know, it's so much is sending stuff and like sending ideas, and he's receiving stuff so much from people, as is Diplo, so sometimes that's the best way to get something to someone, even though that instance we were so lucky it was just the other way around where he just wanted to use that. But I feel like a lot of that goes on still. Like I still send, and I have a lot of relationships with other like producers and DJs where we just send each other ideas and work remotely. And same with a Zoo collab I did with Jeremiah, all remote, sending stuff. Like I've done so much of that with people.
Yeah.
Like it's funny when you have something come out with someone and you've never like met them in person or like,
right.
Yeah, like Zoo. I've never met him in person, I don't think.
Yeah.
But
that is funny. Of course, it makes total sense. That's the way a lot of these things work, especially in the modern era. But I don't know. There's something I keep coming back to, because I didn't realize that about the Skrillex thing, that he was kind of just yoinking a track you had already made, which is what, Trinidad James did, right? In that story we were talking about before. Like, I feel like I don't know if I or you will ever be able to put my finger on it, but it's like there must be something about the way you make music or something about the way you express yourself in your production that like there's kind of that instant appeal where people can immediately like hear it, contextualize it, like reimagine it. I don't know. There are certain artists, not just you, but there's certain artists in history who get sampled a lot. And I always wonder what it is about those artists, Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know if I get sampled a lot, but I do think that like with the Luna one, she is a voice that, a lot of people would love on that. Yeah. Like, so, and I feel like there's certain voices and hooks that, producers love and DJs love, where it's just like, there is some voices that just everyone wants on their record because they just cut through and they work so nicely with dance music. And Aluna's voice is just like that sort of high, like, I don't know, it just sits so nicely on a track, and it's like her melodies are so good. And I think there's definitely some voices that will get sampled very easily.
Yeah. I mean, the absolute top tier voices, it's a small group. And so, that That makes sense that people would be attracted to
Yeah.
it. Let me see if I can connect this, and this might be a reach, but I wanted to ask you about the Grimes AI voice track that you did. And if we're talking about, the great voices of dance music, I think it's really interesting to talk about, when those voices turn into AI and that whole space.
Yeah.
I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, can you kind of quickly summarize what that whole project was with the Grimes AI?
She said that she'll split royalties with anyone that uses her voice. So she made a platform called Elf Tech where you literally feed in a voice and you click transform and then it spits out, gives you a little download link of her voice, like mapped onto what you've fed it. So it's kind of a funny thing because it's not really, I think it was confusing when I did it. I'll finish the story of what I did. I was in London and I had a session with a couple of friends that I work with a lot, and it was like a session for maybe a pitch session. We just wanted to write together. And so I was like, why don't we try this? Like, she just posted about it and I was like, we should write something that we should make a Kito Grimes collab. Like, what would that sound like? So we wrote a song that was like the perspective of I guess an AI, trying to understand love. Right. And it was with Nina Nesbitt and Fred Ball, amazing writer, producers, and Nina's amazing artist as well. So I put Nina's voice in and it just sounded crazy. I just wanted to try it, if anything, just as like an experiment to see what it would be like. And afterwards we were kind of like, the song's I don't know if the song's totally right. But the next day I just messed around with it and kind of remixed. Honestly, I was at my laptop staying with friends, at the kitchen table. I spent maybe 2 hours just flipping it a bit and making it change the beat and made it a bit more mental. And then I went to the friends I was staying with, also dance music, or friends that I know from a long time ago. Moxie, who's a DJ from London.
I just had him on here a couple months ago. Nice dude.
Not that Moxie. Moxie, DJ Moxie girl, Alice Moxie. She's on MTS and has a night called Loop and Loop.
Oh, so it's spelled with an X, like Moxie with an X. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, my bad.
I know the Moxie you're talking about though. And her husband, which is Leon Vinehall, also amazing artist, producer. So I was staying with them and I went to his studio to hear it because he actually just wanted to show me his studio. And then he was like, why don't we just film a little, he helped me. He did some stuff on it as well. We spent maybe an extra hour on it. And then I don't know why I'm going into such a long form story. But, and he just filmed me listening to it in his studio. And then Alice was cooking for us. So she was like, when are you guys going to be So we walked back from the studio and we were just joking about it going viral. And we were like, let's just put it up. I should put it up and just see what happens. It's just me listening to the track with Grimes' voice. And I was like, I'll just put it up and see what happens. And we made so many jokes about it, about it going viral. It was just so funny when we woke up and I was like, oh my God, you guys, Grimes manager, it's got so many views. Grimes reposted it. Her manager's messaged it. It was just such a funny, I think out of anything I've done in music in my whole life career, that got the most press. The following months were just so funny. It was because then she wanted to make it a real collab and she wanted to mix her vocal into it. And then she was like, we should do our own versions. We'll do she called it the Taylor Swift nomenclature, where it would be
oh, right.
Kito's version and Grimes' version. And then we couldn't decide on artwork. And so we did a poll on Twitter and I picked artwork that pissed off all her fans. And then, so they obviously picked hers, but then I went against the popular vote. It was great. But yeah, it was very confusing, I think, for a lot of people, because I'm not sure that everyone understood how I used that or how that platform works, and what aspects of it were like AI generated and what aspects were just made by humans, which is most of the aspects were made by humans. It was just like her voice.
Yeah.
That, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Grimes, I mean, I don't know her personally, but there's a bit of a mystique. So it's not like she's out giving a TED talk on how this all works. And
yeah. I think that was like kind of like part of the fun of the whole experience with that. It's just that it was like, what the fuck is this? And
well, because you also were like stepping into the AI in music discussion very early, probably somewhat unintentionally, and then all of a sudden everyone expects you to have well-crafted opinions about the future of technology and music. And
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny. I was like all of a sudden on a panel with, like a AI discussion with a bunch of people, and like LA Times or New York Times, I can't remember which one. Like, and I was just like, I'm a person that tried a thing. I have no expertise in this whatsoever. And they were like, we just want your perspective on, and then it would be like all these in-depth questions. And I'm like, I literally said, I've just tried this thing. This is how I used it. This is like my experience with it. And I mean, it's obviously the nature of anyone that uses like technology in a creative field. You're kind of curious to try new stuff that comes out, especially as a producer. It's kind of our job to be like on top of new stuff that comes out. And, that's otherwise I don't know. It's like, it moves so fast. It's the same with plugins that come out, or, we're always geeking out over new stuff. So to me, it just felt like an extension of that, like, oh, another vocal manipulation thing to try.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think that's how it should be looked at, honestly. I mean, do you, in your session work, talking to other musicians, any of that, I mean, have you found anyone who's really freaking out about the AI thing? Because I don't know that I have a fully formed opinion yet, but most of the people I talk to are either stoked about it or kind of just don't care and don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, so I know that in other fields, like, I think people that do, music for TV and like that side of it, I'm sure feels a lot more scary than what we do, which I can understand why, because they're at the mercy of companies that are trying to cut costs in any way that they can. And if they can generate something that's kind of going to tick the same boxes because it's not that meaningful in the aspect of, unless it's like scoring a film, that's different, but like, stock standard music in the back of things, and there are lots of people that's their main livelihood. So I understand that side of it must feel pretty scary. And there's so many new things being developed. And
have you seen Suno? SUNO?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't. Oh, I've tried it. Have I tried it? I think I tried that one.
It's getting good. I've played with it a little bit.
Kind of crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like a lot of them we're in like early stages of where, you try something, you go, oh, it's all right, I'm better than that. But it's like, well, this is the first iPhone. Like,
Yo, it's absolutely. To take it all the way back, Kurt Flostradamus, who we mentioned very early on, he's involved with a lot of that AI in music stuff now. And he was telling me, I've been doing it a little bit. It's kind of fun. What he's doing is he'll use something like Suno to just generate, a beat, a song, an idea, and he'll kind of, whatever he's feeling, it'll be like, make me a French house song with a violin or whatever it is. And then from that, he'll use a different software to like make stems out of that generated beat.
Oh, crazy.
And then he'll just sample like a little bit of one of the stems.
That's cool.
Put it into a new tune. And he was saying for his creativity, it's been really good. And I thought that seemed like a pretty good way to do it.
I don't see how that's different to Splice, and it's like you're getting unique samples that, because splices, we're all like pulling the same samples. And so I kind of feel like doing like having a personal splice AI imaginator thing generator, like that's cool. That's a good use of, like, I can imagine myself using AI in that way, like, and just like cutting out annoying tasks. Like I would prefer for AI to play a role in my life in a way that just cuts out shit that isn't that creative and that's annoying, and like, you know, makes more room for like actual good, fun, creative.
Yeah, getting to the fun, anything that'll get me to the fun faster. That's what I need. I mean, out of anything, that's what I need.
Same.
Yeah.
And like, hopefully it will not get too smart and won't like kill our roles as producers, but I mean, whatever. I don't know. By that time,
we'll be dead by then. You know, it's like,
I don't know.
that's a problem for somebody who's going to be alive in, you know, 75 years. Yeah. But I mean, in all of this, like, I don't even know what I want to ask here, but kind of just like, what's the point of all of it at these days for you? Like, do you have, sometimes I ask people like, what's the most fun part of what you do, or what do you look forward to the most? Yeah. But more broadly, kind of just, I don't know, what does it mean to you these days, and how is that different from how you started?
I think it's different from, yes, but maybe more different from like the kind of formative years where I was like really working hard to build my career, because I think that I was coming at it from a place of like survival, whereas now I feel like I'm almost tapping back into where I started, which was like, I've got nothing to lose, which is a weird way of thinking, because I do feel like I have something to lose. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, well, now I've figured out how to make how to survive off music. So what's the point unless I'm like tapping into that stuff that actually means something? Otherwise, like, I'm kind of like, when I'm doing jobs that just for the money, because I feel like, you know, I can't say no or whatever, or like doing stuff that I don't really care about, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, go get a job, I don't know, anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like, so I think that's been my, like, the point of my life as a musician recently has been like, really focusing on stuff that I care about, that I don't particularly, my goals aren't to be like the biggest, best producer, and definitely not biggest, best artist. I think just like working with people I really love, making stuff that feels exciting to me, trying to break rules more, because I feel like I've learned not all of them, but enough tools to like follow the rules.
Yeah.
That now I'm like, it's boring if you actually follow the rules. Also, there's no point in me trying to compete with like some amazing pop producer that has been doing this and trained with like, I don't know, just like coming at it from that. There's just no point. Like, I have to lean into like the stuff that makes me special as an artist and a producer, and work with people that do stuff that I don't do. And I don't know, that's just been my kind of like, I don't know, the thing that I keep coming back to over the last year is just like what's exciting to me, and that I want to play my friends, and that we're going to get all excited about. And no, I love that. I love all of that. Are you trying to get back on the road a little more? Is touring a thing you want to get back into? So. Yeah. I think so, but it's funny because like I am such a homebody and I love being in my studio with my cats, and but like I think the balance of it is really fun when I can do that. Like, you know, a good chunk of summer can be like playing shows, because it gets me all excited to be home again and be in the studio. I don't think I'll ever be like a nonstop touring DJ. But yeah, I want to play more for sure.
Awesome.
Definitely.
One thing you just said that I think I'm going to take from this too is you were saying that, you know, at the start you were just making music for fun with your friends. Other DJs would play it. That's exciting. then eventually you get interested in how do I make this sustainable, stable, and you get to that point and then kind of long for the way it was before you got to that point. And it's a really good, it makes me think about like this whole career. It's just kind of like jumping from island to island, and you can't really stay on any one island too long, or, you know, you get bored or you lose the plot or the island sinks or whatever it is. And it's good to remember that like you kind of, once you focus on something and get there, that it really is valuable to then think about what is going to be fulfilling after this thing. Because I think it's so, at least for me, it's so easy to sort of get to somewhere, achieve a goal, and then to kind of be like, all right, I'm done. I don't have to, like, I can just keep this going, which is fine for a minute, but that's not a way to be sustainable in this career. And
completely. And it also is biggest part of the enjoyment of it is like the possibilities and what's next. Like, you know, there is something exciting about working on something that you haven't seen to completion yet. And I was chatting to Dave from Chromeo about like release day blues, and we just like named it. Because he was saying, you know, oh, we don't talk about it enough that, you know, something comes out and then you just feel like shit. It's like this weird kind of dip where you've been working on something, and then he wrote a whole post about it because he was kind of like, yeah, just thinking about, and everyone was like, oh my God, like that's so real. But like it is kind of like survival as well, you know, jumping on something new and getting excited about it, because sitting in that like, okay, I did what I came to do, like, now what?
Right. Yeah. You got to keep evolving, which I guess that's just a human trait in general. Like you as a person also has to keep evolving, or you get set in your ways or stuck, or the future leaves you behind, that kind of thing. But I don't know. It's just a good thing. It's like one of those funny things that I think we all know, but then also forget on almost a daily basis.
Yeah. Along with like so many other things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No.
I forget on a daily basis, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. Like last night, freaking out about unfinished music, and like, I'm like, how many times have I done that?
Right. And it still feels the same. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So silly.
Well, I don't know. Conversations like this do make me feel better. I really appreciate you being here. Is there anything we didn't talk about? Anything we should mention before we get out of here? Anything else on your mind?
I don't know. The only other thing I didn't really like talk about, which is more about present time and what I'm doing, is throwing these parties. I've been throwing like Club Kito parties in LA, which I guess, talking about scenes and not feeling like really a part of one anymore, I felt like I missed having something that was like a little world. And in some ways that's been a bit of an exploration in is it possible to get that feeling back again? And it's been so good. It's very different to where I came from, and especially because I feel like I straddle that like the intersection between kind of pop and dance music, club music. But it's actually been so nice to see that those two things can exist in a space, and some people are coming because they know some songs that I did with some pop artists, and then some, you know, singer, like artists want to come and DJ for the first time.
Right.
And like, it's been so fun. It's been like, just like really, I don't know, like, confirming of just like, there is like a scene and a community within the stuff that I'm doing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's like aligned with one particular genre of music. It's just like this space feels really great and like adjacent. It works with the music I'm into, because I think that question has come up a lot for me as an artist, where people have been like, well, what's a DJ set cycle? You know, something I talked to my manager about, my agent, and it's like, well, you're putting out pop music, but, you know, who are you in dance music? And so throwing parties and just like going back to that ethos of just like, well, if nobody's understanding it, I'll just do it in a local way and make sense of it myself. And that's been like probably, one of the biggest highlights of the last year for me is doing that.
Oh, that sounds really so cool. Fun. Like what kind of venues are we talking about, and what kind of artists are coming through to play it? Like set the scene a little. I've
been throwing them at the Edition in LA, which is like a really nice space with good drinks and a great sound system and like looks cool, and which I was a bit like nervous to do something in because it's in West Hollywood, and I was like, oh, I feel like my vibe is more East Side, but I don't want to do I just want it to be like a good sound system where it feels like, that was kind of top of my list, and it's been awesome. The first one I did with Jimmy Edgar, and that was scary and great and funny because we had such different crowds. Like you could tell like the East Side downtown crew and then like the West Hollywood crew. The next one, I feel like I nailed the vibe of in between both worlds, and it was so fun. And it was mostly girls. It was like Empress of and Ladies of Leisure, which is like Toblo's DJ group.
Okay, nice.
Collective. It was just like all the girls. Who else? A-Track came and played. I did like a back-to-back with A-Track, Chrome Sparks, Offie.
Amazing.
Yeah, Blue to Tiger. Loads of people. It's just been like a very fun crossover of like artists. Like Empress of did her first DJ set at my party.
Oh, that's cool.
She was like practicing, and now she's like DJing around town all the time.
That's great. I love that.
But yeah, like it's definitely, I want to get more like DJs from like the previous chapter of my life, and yeah, it's just been really fun, and it's been
you're doing
awesome.
It monthly?
How many? Kind of like not strictly, but like it has been. I've done 4 now. But yeah, I think I'm going to try and aim to get it to a point of doing it monthly. The next one I'm going to do next month is like a release kind of party for the Is You project with Chrome Sparks. And yeah, but I'd love to build it out so I can do it in other cities as well. And
I was going to say, if you go back on tour, that sounds like a pretty good concept.
I think so too. It's so fun. And it has been really what I dreamed it to be, where people have been like, I want to come play. Like, that looks fun, So I think like that being like a space where it looks so fun that other people want to come and play a set if they're in town or something. Like, yeah, that's the dream.
Oh, man. And I mean, the way you're describing it makes it sound like a lot of the parties I got excited about in the first place when we started doing this.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too.
What could be better than that? I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
Well, I'll let you get out of here. This has been really, really fun. Thank you for doing this. I had a really good time talking to you.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And you have to let me know if you come. We have to meet in real life at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was just out in LA a couple weeks ago, but I'll be back soon.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.